grandfather's leg was amputated. An infection leg was amputated. I was 13 when my grandfather's leg was amputated, above the knee. An infection, they said. Something nasty spreading throughout his body. My mother and I traveled 9 hours to South Carolina to ensure the oak tree of our family could sustain after losing a limb. I don't remember the ride to the hospital or the hospital itself, but I do recall him sleeping flat-backed in bed post-surgery, and my mother talking to the doctor, or maybe it was the nurse, about the dressing on the wound. A mound of gauze as if the base of what was left of his leg, now footless and blunt, had been fashioned into a giant Q-tip. My grandfather had been turned into someone else, someone I would never actually get to know because he would never leave the hospital again. I was 13 when my grandfather's leg was amputated above the knee, and 13 when he died. His death would mark the end not only of his life or my mother's tangible relationship with her parents, my grandmother had passed 3 years prior, but also of our bi-monthly journeys to the South. It had become routine for my mother to get off work every other Friday, have my older brother Alan and me pack the trunk with duffel bags and a small cooler containing a few aluminum foil turkey sandwiches, then give Alan a list of instructions of what not to do while we were gone, though she knew he wouldn't abide by a single word. But I suppose she figured his disobedience and absence was better than his persistent griping, which included tying each word to a disrespectful groan and taking everything in his life out on me by trying to take life out of me. Alan was afflicted with adolescence, and there was just too much ground to cover for my mother to deal with the futility of trying to cure him. Not to mention, at this point, my parents had come undone, and she was doing this alone. In the car, we'd listen to the radio, oldies, and I'd wait for my mother to ask the same question she asked every trip. "How you know these words? You weren't even born when this came out," she'd say. Or, "Boy, what you know about the Temptations?" Or Marvin Gaye, or Aretha Franklin, as if she hadn't been playing this music each day of my life. Their lyrics seemed to be spackled to the roof of my mouth, sharing space with the MCs of my time, an internal intergenerational residence and resonance. We'd pull into rest stops where I'd get peanut M&Ms or gas stations where we'd load up on 6-packs of peanut butter crackers my mother referred to as nabs to go with the turkey sandwiches, of course. Sometimes she'd even play a number. Out-of-town lottery felt luckier, she'd say. And whenever she'd get tired, whenever the hypnotic perforated line began to lull her to sleep, she'd crack the window and talk. My mother would sermonize about the importance of dreams and purpose searching, meditation, and energy. She'd say things about how she wanted me to live a grounded life, a centered life, and a life in flight all at the same time. Conversations she felt like she could have only with me, her child, a child, because the bulk of our family saw her crystals and smudging as the antithesis to their conservative views on God. "Some things are meant to stay between us," she'd say. My mother would tell me stories about growing up in a no-stoplight town on 200 acres of land acquired by her great-great-grandfather, who was a freedman, how his chosen name after emancipation was January, and how no one actually knew how he got the land, but everyone believed he somehow inherited it from the family who formerly owned him. He built a house on this acreage, but he only knew of 2 types of homes, slave quarters and the big house. And to build slave quarters was out of the question. So he built a house resembling the one of the family who had treated him as property.